Anytime I wake up at like 3 a.m., I can't go back to sleep. It's like the witching hour. I'm convinced that there's like a demon in my room. Like literally every time this happens to me, I'm like, fuck it, guess I can't go back to sleep now. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. So I asked you guys on Instagram what you wanted to see this week for a video, and you guys picked ghosts. So I was thinking about this and I wanted to do something that kind of shows you guys a little bit of who I am and like what kind of tastes I have. I know a lot of you don't really know me. Even, I have a couple of friends obviously that are like the best people ever who support me so much in everything that I do, and I love you guys. But I know some of you guys that follow me don't really know me that well, or you literally have never met me and I'm a total stranger. So I wanted to do something that kind of showed you guys a little bit of who I am, which sounds weird if you're looking at the title. I wanted to tell ghost stories like all in the same kind of category, like a theme. And the theme I decided to go with for today's video is trucker ghost stories. You're probably still wondering what the hell does this have to do with me? Well, fun fact about me, I seriously considered becoming a truck driver for a long time. I really wanted to do it. I love driving. I love road trips. I love America, like the scenery. I love all different parts of this country. My dream is to just go on like a huge road trip across the country. And I like being by myself. Like I like being with other people too, but I'm very comfortable with like solitude, and just driving is so peaceful for me and like stress relieving. And I know with truck driving you have schedules, and I know it's not as easy as just like driving around. I know that. But yeah, that was something that I was seriously considering doing for a while, and I ended up deciding against it just because the pollution thing kind of weighs heavy on my conscience, and also the fact that I feel like that's going to be one of the first jobs to go when artificial intelligence starts taking over the job market. Not to be all dramatic, and if you're a truck driver or you know a truck driver, I think it's a great job. I just decided not to put the time into learning how to drive and all that for those reasons. If you have seen any of my other videos, you know the style that I usually do. I don't normally just narrate. I usually put things into my own words and like have pictures and videos like intermittently throughout the video. But these stories that I found, I feel like it would be better for me to just narrate, and I'll put images to be most of the video. A lot of horror YouTubers do this, and I think it's a good format with the imagery and the music. It just works better, I think. Anyway, now that all that's out of the way, without further ado, let's get into these ghost stories. So our first story today comes from thetruckersreport.com. This was a thread about paranormal stories from the highway, and this was posted by a user named MusicMaker on May 10th, 2010. This turned out to be paranormal, but I didn't know it until later. It was on Highway 30 in PA. The highway is a curvy 2-lane road, and it's not recommended for trucks, but it's quicker. I came around a curve and came upon a bridge, and there was a young girl, around 2 or so, standing at the side of the bridge. I swerved to the left lane, and it dawned on me, what would a young girl be doing standing there at this time of the morning, around 2 a.m.? I pulled over to the shoulder the best I could and walked back to her. I asked her her name, and she told me. I asked her, what are you doing here? And she pointed behind her. I looked over behind us, and I could barely see an overturned car at the bottom of the ravine there. I ran down there, and there was a couple in the car, both unconscious. I went back to the truck, grabbed my bar, I used it on tightening straps on a flatbed, called 911, and headed back to the car. I broke the windshield out, got the guy out, and that's when the paramedics and the state police showed up. They got the woman out. You could tell she was very, very pregnant. They sent them out by ambulance, and the state trooper was taking a statement. He says, I'm surprised you could see that car way down there. I told him I didn't. Their daughter was standing by the bridge, and that's why I stopped. He radioed the ambulance. The ambulance radioed back. The couple says they don't have a daughter. Ooh, so we got like a good ghost in that one. A nice little benevolent little girl. Wonder what happened to her. The next story is from the same forum, and this was posted by 1_tooth_wonder. The names agree on these guys, and this was on July 12th, 2014. I got one that's probably not paranormal, but weird nonetheless. I was driving through the Sam Houston National Forest one night around 1 a.m. There are no houses on this particular stretch of road for many miles, just heavy forest. The road being void of traffic, I was not paying the best of attention. Lost in thought, I guess. So I was startled to get a glimpse of a woman at the side of the road, either wearing some kind of red or with blood on her clothes. I couldn't tell as I saw her for just a second as I trucked by. I decided to turn around and have another look. So I went on for about a mile or so until I found a Forest Service road big enough to back into and turn around. All the while I'm thinking, maybe she was just walking. You know, maybe there was a car in the woods, maybe she had been beaten. As I got closer, I started thinking, this might be a setup for a robbery, and then there are going to be some dudes in the woods ready to beat my ass when I get out of the truck. Either way, it didn't matter because when I got back to the spot, she was nowhere to be seen. No other cars had come by during the 5 minutes or so it took me to get back there. This means she had to be in the woods at 1 a.m. That in itself just creeps me the hell out. I turned around again so I could continue my route, and while passing back through the spot, I got a very apprehensive, sick feeling and almost puked. I lit a smoke, drank a little soda, and got the hell out of there. Still, I don't know what the deal was, but I get creeped out each time I go there at night. And I'm positive it was not my imagination. I'm certain what I saw was a woman just standing there. Who knows? That one I really don't like because it makes me feel like uneasy. That whole thing about getting a really bad feeling, like that's what makes me feel like it's paranormal. I mean, you can get bad feelings from things that are just bad happening that aren't paranormal, I guess, but I don't know, like the fact that she literally just disappeared, and you would think that if it was an actual person and they saw someone go by that they would like want to wait around and see if they come back, you know, if there was really an alive woman standing there. Okay guys, now the third story here is kind of long, so get your drinks, get your snacks, like the story times say. And this was from thoughtco.com, and it's a story, supposedly true story, called Phantom of the Truck Stop. I'm an over-the-road truck driver, and I drive across all of the lower 48 states. I see some unusual things from time to time, but nothing compares to what I encountered in Palestine, Arkansas in mid-June of 2011. I was on a long haul from Detroit, Michigan to Houston, Texas. This was day 3 of my trip, and I was beginning to run out of driving hours for the day. I noticed a truck stop / gas station on the side of I-40. Pulled off and decided to call it a night. I was running ahead of schedule, so I was going to have myself a long 14-hour break instead of the usual 10. Off the bat, I didn't like the area, but I had no other choice. The bathrooms were unkempt and had enough graffiti on the walls to classify itself as an inner-city truck stop, even though it was practically in the middle of nowhere. It was also a small shop with parking for only a dozen trucks. After washing up, I purchased a new work knife, some hot food, and headed out to my truck. I sat in the captain's chair and listened to the radio while I ate my dinner with the windows down, letting in the dry wind. The Mississippi River had just begun flooding, but there hadn't been any rain in over a week. The surrounding area was beginning to look like Nevada more than Arkansas. I finished my meal, cleaned up a bit, slid out of the seat and onto the pavement as a gust of warm wind hit me. I strolled over to the dumpster, tossed my garbage inside, and began slowly walking back towards my truck. I fished out a filterless cigarette and leaned against the bug-splattered side of my truck and lit it with my lighter. I enjoyed the smoke as I watched the sun set below the horizon. A few more trucks had backed into spots. I spotted one guy walking out of the store with a bottle of beer in his hand, looking around nervously as he quickly strode over to his truck. The life of a trucker. Something interesting and new every day. Risking his job over one lousy beer. I climbed back into the cab of the truck, dropped back into the sleeper berth, changed into a pair of pajamas, and lay down to get some rest. Didn't bother setting an alarm. I felt sleep creep over me and accepted it as I drifted off into dream world. I awoke with the cab of the truck rocking violently, knocking the bottle of water I had placed on my nightstand over onto the floor. I sat straight up, fully awake, and pressed the button on the truck's radio alarm. It was shortly after 3 in the morning. I reached down and grabbed the bottle of water that had fallen, twisted the cap off, and took a few deep gulps before wondering what had rocked my truck so violently. Then I remembered. The wind. I settled back down, got my heart rate back below 100, and laid my head down on the pillow. The truck rocked again, knocking my ashtray over that I had set in the cup holder and once again tossing my water bottle onto the floor. I flipped on the overhead light, slid on my shoes, and grabbed another cigarette from my pack. I opened the curtains, sat in the captain's chair, and shut off the sleeper light. I opened the door and noticed that it had cooled down considerably. I shut off the truck, pocketed the keys, and climbed down onto the pavement to look around. At this time of night, the truck stop only had lights around the gasoline pumps, and their light could not reach the truck parking area. I looked around a moment, lit my cigarette, and then I noticed something. The wind had stopped blowing. I wondered what had caused my truck to rock so violently. Earthquake, maybe? I knew that a few had been reported around Memphis, and I was probably close enough to have felt a tremor, but that rocking motion did not feel like an earthquake. It felt like the wind hitting the side of my truck with a strong gust. Curiously and cautiously, I walked around the front of my truck to the passenger side and looked down the length of my trailer. I noticed movement. Low to the ground, about 4 feet. Not fast. I used my keys to unlock the passenger side door, jumped up and grabbed my large flashlight from an overhead storage compartment, climbed back down, closed and locked the door. I clicked on the light and it shined down the side of my trailer. There was a young girl standing off into the field about 10 feet behind my truck. But when I looked harder, she wasn't there. Well, like I said earlier, truck drivers see something new every day. This was certainly new. I began to walk toward the rear of my truck, scanning the field with my flashlight for any trace of the girl I had just seen. When I reached the back, there was no trace. Must have been a trick of the eyes. Heck, I haven't even fully awakened yet. I glanced over my shoulder. There were no cars at the pumps, and the clerk definitely hadn't noticed me. I felt the call of the wind coming on, and I didn't feel much like walking into the store wearing my pajamas. I was in the middle of nowhere and no one could see me, so I figured no harm, no foul. Stood at the rear of the trailer and did my business, looking around for that girl again. Also hoping that she wasn't hiding behind something and watching me do this. I put everything away and walked to the driver's side of my truck toward the cab. I took the last couple of puffs off my cigarette and flung it into the parking lot. Used my keys to unlock the truck and pop the door open. Just as I planted my foot on the fairing, I heard a distinct giggle. A girl's giggle. I stepped back down and shined the flashlight around. "This is getting kind of creepy," I said out loud. "He heard me," a small girl's voice answered back. I jumped backward away from my truck. The voice had come from inside the cab. No, something was wrong. I had the entire truck locked up while I was walking around. There was no way that someone could have gotten in without breaking a window. Steeling myself for what was going to be an uncomfortable encounter at the least, I took a step up on the fairing and leaned my head into the truck. "Is anyone in here?" I asked. I hit the switch to turn on the sleeper berth light. I climbed in. put a knee on the seat and peered into the sleeper berth. "Good night," a soft voice said, which seemed to emanate from all around me. I flinched as I heard the word and felt a cold chill run through my body. I slid off the seat and stood up in the cab, bumping my temple on the overhead storage bins. Looked around the sleeper, but no one was there. I turned around and shuffled into the cab to close the door when I saw the young girl standing outside my truck on the pavement, looking up at me with lifeless eyes. Those eyes, you see, they weren't meant for a person. They were designed for a predator, and all of a sudden I felt like prey. I reached forward and slammed the door shut and flicked the lock. I quickly decided that I was not staying here for the rest of the night. I turned the key and heard my truck's motor rumble to life, along with a familiar, annoying buzzing that was my air pressure gauge telling me that I didn't have enough air to release the brakes. I took a furtive glance out the window, and there she stood, still as a tree, looking up at me and smiling. I didn't want to get any closer to the window until I was ready to get my truck moving. This was wrong, and I didn't want any part of this. That girl wasn't human. At least, not anymore she wasn't. It was almost as if she was something so inhuman that it would take the form of a human. It's hard for me to explain, and I feel sick just thinking about it. I heard the siren shut off and hit the valves to supply air to my brake system. As the system began to air up, the siren came on again. Screw this, I thought to myself. I have enough to get out of here. I disengaged the clutch, ground the truck into gear, and roared out of the parking lot like the devil himself was behind me, which, for all I knew, he was. I looked in my side mirror as I was about to start turning right and saw the girl washed in the red and amber glow of my running lights. She was smiling at me and waving. I flew through my gears as quickly as they would let me and got back on the interstate. I drove for about 45 minutes, repeatedly hitting the switch to turn on my interior lights to look around the cab and the sleeper before finally spotting a larger truck stop at the next exit. After backing into one of the few remaining spots left, I shut off my lights and turned on the sleeper berth light as I walked into the back, then paused. At the store, I had bought a souvenir. Nothing fancy, just a postcard with a picture of Arkansas on it. I also had bought a new knife. I had never even taken the knife out of the box and remembered putting the postcard into a drawer for safekeeping. The point of the blade had been driven directly into the spot on I-40 where I had originally stopped for the night. The blade had been driven in deep, pegging my postcard to the nightstand. It took me several minutes just to work the knife loose enough to withdraw it from the nightstand. Thankfully, when I turned the postcard over, no message had been left for me. To this day, I do not know what I saw. I hear other truckers talk of strange things that they see on the interstates, U.S. highways, and state routes, but I've never mentioned my experience. Always felt that just by mentioning her, I'd walk back out to my truck and there she would be, sitting on my bunk, waiting for me. I threw that postcard away and tossed the knife into a dumpster. I got another postcard from Arkansas just to keep the collection going. Got 36 so far. I hate how he said that he didn't want to talk about it because he felt like that would conjure her again, because that is 100% how I think. I always try not to think of things because I feel like me thinking about it or talking about it will summon it. Yet here I am talking about it on YouTube. Alright, on to the next one. Now this is from a website called theghostdiaries.com, and the author is anonymous. I was driving home one night as I had not seen my family for about 2 weeks. Filled with excitement, I decided to take a shortcut through a desolate area that I didn't know too well. I had heard stories through the scanner about it, mostly ghostly tales, and I do, as a matter of fact, believe in ghosts. But my eagerness to surprise my wife and kids got the best of me. It was about 3:40 a.m. or so in the morning, and I had been on that particular road for about an hour already, and nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Suddenly, I get to an area packed with old, creepy trees on the side and tons of shrubbery. As usual, my radio was on, and out of nowhere, this horrible static starts to crackle through the speakers. I started to feel chilly and uncomfortable when, wouldn't you know it, I saw a man hanging from a tree at the side of the road. Yes, there he was, his body even swinging from side to side. I stepped on the brake as fast and carefully as I could, but I kept looking through the rearview mirror and he was still there. I grabbed my coat, my gun, and my flashlight, and I had my phone in my pocket, started to dial 911, but there was no signal. So I made my way through the shrubs, and when I reached the tree, he was gone. I moved the flashlight around thinking maybe he got free. I went back to my truck, looked back, and there he was again, hanging like I had seen him before. After this, let's just say I didn't like taking shortcuts anymore. I noticed too, like this is the second one now, this one and the one before this, it was all around like 3 something in the morning. Alright, and I know it's not 3 exactly, at least according to this one, he said 3:40, but anytime I wake up at like 3 a.m., I can't go back to sleep. It's like the witching hour. I'm convinced that there's like a demon in my room. Like literally every time this happens to me, I'm like, fuck it, guess I can't go back to sleep now. Guess I'm gonna have a really horrible day tomorrow. Okay guys, so we're on to the last story now. And this is from the same website, theghostdiaries.com. And this was by another anonymous poster, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll put in a title here or whatever, but I didn't write down that there's an author, so I don't think there is one. I used to drive between San Francisco and Cheyenne, Wyoming, a lot of the times. It's about 16 to 20 hours of driving, depending on the weather. My second time driving that route, I was driving at night when suddenly my truck starts to make this odd grinding noise. It sounded like as if I had run over something and it got stuck. It's about 2 a.m. I pull up to a very well-lit rest stop, and I wake my buddy up, who had been sleeping the whole time. As we both make our way out of the vehicle, I started to explain to him the situation about the grinding noise, when we start to hear what sounded like a kid crying. There's not a car in sight besides ours. At the same time, we had heard frequent stories about child trafficking and kidnappings nearby, so we decided to check it out. We grabbed our flashlights and made our way towards the bathroom since that's where the noise was coming from. As we get closer, we realized it was coming from the woman's bathroom. It's a low, dull sobbing, and we were prepared for the worst. We walked in, expecting to see someone brutally beaten or worse, but we see nothing. We only hear this sound. It's still there, but there's no one there. It's completely empty. We turned the lights on and still, nothing. We checked each stall just to make sure, and nothing. We even looked exactly where the noise was coming from, and again, nothing. Is it a hidden camera? A speaker? What the fuck? My buddy sees a small window and opens it up, and the noise just ceased. We stood there for a few seconds. Then the window slams shut on its own and the crying begins again. We were out of that bathroom in seconds as we ran towards the truck, and you could still hear the crying. Of course, the grinding noise is still there, so this time I pull up to another rest stop some miles away where we checked underneath and we saw some sort of red and silver metal stuck right in there, and we couldn't take it out. A few days later, I took it to a mechanic buddy of mine, and he told me that the piece of scrap metal that was stuck was part of a kid's bicycle. I don't know if this is somehow related to our experience, but it was one of those moments that, for me, I'll never forget. Okay, wow. I think out of all of them, that one scares me the most. Just like the whole thing with the crying in the bathroom, the window slamming shut, like, I feel like I would have been the most scared with that one. It's just because it sounds like something horrible happened to him or her, you know, and just really tragic deaths like that usually leave tormented spirits, and that's what it sounds like that kid is. I don't know. I'm starting to think it was probably a good idea that I didn't go into trucking after reading some of these stories, or all of them actually. Also, I don't know if you guys could tell, but like I tried to do like those faux freckles today, which I know this is like totally not related to the video, but I don't know if I like them or not. I'm not a beauty guru, so whatever, it doesn't matter. Don't worry guys, I'm not switching up the content on you. I know there's most of you are probably like, I don't fucking care about makeup, but I don't know if you can see it or not. If I look weird, I won't know until I really sit down and edit this. Like I can't see things that well on this little viewfinder. I don't see it until I like put it on my laptop like full screen. So yeah, if I look weird, don't worry, I won't do this again. But yeah guys, that's all the stories I have for today's video. Please let me know if you guys like this format for the horror themed videos that I'm going to be doing, or if you prefer me to do it in the style that I do my other videos. Like that, for example, my doppelganger video. That's like a good example. If you want to watch that, I'll put a link to it. Anyway, thanks for watching guys. Hope you're having a great week, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.